Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns, and I am certain that the headline of that email which said how voting for David Vitter can result in you obtaining $736 a year in your pocket legally got your attention. All right, and so we're going to elaborate on that. And I'm just going to say this. What we're going to be talking about is the legal system within Louisiana. And I'm going to give you an illustration because the news media, there was a forum a few weeks ago about legal reform in Louisiana. The media attended and they said, oh, this is too complicated. Well, I think that's an insult to the average viewer's intelligence. But going on the premise that they believe it is too complicated for the average voter to understand, I'm going to simplify it quite a bit. Now, let me just say this. John Bel Edwards, David Vitter's opponent in the gubernatorial election, John Bel Edwards was a no-show at this legal forum. However, through modern technology, we're going to make it just as if he was there. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, I attended a Baton Rouge Press Club meeting, as I have a tendency to do, and I attended the one that had the gubernatorial forum, and I posed the same identical question that Chuck McMain's posed with regard to the jury trial threshold. And you're going to hear both answers. But let me just say this, and that's the way we're going to do it by way of technology. It'll be just as if the two men were in the same room to have the debate. But let me just say this, below this video, there is an actual example of what this threshold is doing all over the state. It is a very specific example. Yes, it happened within my family, and you're going to see what exactly it is that transpires time and time again in so many small automobile accidents, okay? You're going to see a case that was basically worth nothing, for which there was ultimately a $48,500 settlement, okay? I'm not going to go into all the details of it because it's put right below this video in very succinct detail with all the relevant links for you to click on, including the settlement letter from State Farm entailing that matter. But I want to make this statement. You know, I have no doubt that John Bel Edwards, as he tells you that he's not going to impose any tax increases, he might actually believe that. I don't know. But I can tell you one thing. Each of us pays a tax that you don't stop to think about, and it's this. And I'm going to issue a challenge. This is an auto renewal. This is an auto renewal premium for automobile liability insurance. And I'm going to challenge you to do this. Go get yours. I want every viewer that is within the sound of my voice to go get your latest automobile liability renewal. And I'm just going to tell you right now, the average yearly cost for insurance in Louisiana for a family of four is $2,453. I'll repeat that number again, $2,453. And we're going to give you a link for a document from the Lawsuit Abuse Watch from Louisiana that will substantiate that figure, because I don't want you to think it is a shoot from the hip figure. But I will tell you, the type of thing you see illustrated below this video, it has been attributed to that our insurance rates, Louisiana's insurance rates, versus those of other states in which there is no jury trial threshold, which they're 36, that is inflating our insurance costs by approximately 30%. Some estimates have ranged to 50%, but I like to be conservative. I'm a CPA, an inactive CPA, so I like to be conservative on anything. So taking 30% of that number, you get $736. That's how I came up with the figure that we had this headline on. And I'm gonna show you in very vivid, easy to remember detail just what we're talking about. All right, $2,453 is your average insurance cost for the average family out there. All right, and it's inflated 30%. 30% of $2,453 is $736. I happen to have $740 in my hands right here. All right. In fact, we're going to count it. We're going to count it so that everyone can know. This is what it's costing you every year. All right. Now, 20, 40, 60, 81, 20, 40, 60, 82, 20, 40, 60, 83, 20, 40, 60, 84, 20, 40, 60, 85, 20, 40, 60, 86, 20, 40, 60, 87, 20, 40, $740. All right. You're going to uncover through the rest of this video that John Bel Edwards is loyally behind the trial lawyers and not wanting to reduce that jury threshold. You'll see the actual answer he gave to the question on that I posed to him at the Baton Rouge Press Club. John Bel Edwards is from Amite, as is quite a bit of my family. In fact, the vast majority of my family is from Amite. And Amite at one time was known as a dairy farm. You had cattle, was pretty prominent. It was a very prominent industry. It's not so much anymore, but John Bel Edwards has been around in Amite for a long time. So he would be familiar with a cattle prod, okay? And I'm going to use that because what John Bel Edwards in his stance is in essence doing is he is forcing all of us to go outside and face a hurricane because the forces of these trial lawyers that want to get their hands on our money through the techniques that you see below this video, we're trying to hold on to it, okay? But we're having to go outside into a raging hurricane with 120-mile-an-hour winds, and we're trying our best to hold on to this money, okay? And we're fixing to manufacture, you see the fan behind me, we're fixing to manufacture an indoor hurricane because I love to sleep under a heavy fan. And trust me, when you crank this sucker up to high, it's a hurricane force wind, okay? And we're fixing to manufacture it. And we got John Bel Edwards right behind us, and he's got a cattle prod. And he's saying, you can try to hold on to that money, but me and my trial lawyer buddies, we ain't gonna let you keep it, all right? So I want you to envision John Bel Edwards approaching me in my back with that hot cattle prod, and I'm gonna try to hold on to this money as here comes the hurricane. All right. Let's crank it up. Yes, sir, we've got a hurricane, and I'm trying to hold on. I'm trying to hold on to that $740, and along comes John Bel Edwards, and he hits me with that cattle prod. There goes my money. There goes the money. All right. There's no way you're going to hold on to that $740 when you're approached with a cattle prod. There is no person on earth that can withstand that kind of pain. So you've got the trial lawyers putting up this hurricane force winds, making it tough enough for you to hold on to your money. And John Bel Edwards says, I got you back, trial lawyers, I got you back. And in so doing, he takes a cattle prod and he stamps it on our back, forcing you to release that money. And I don't know about you, but I don't like it when somebody takes my money, okay? Because that's what's going on here. Now, that's going to conclude my segment. The remainder of this video is going to be David Vitter and John Bel Edwards contrasting their positions, and I will put a little written inserts so that it becomes clear. Now, let me just say one thing. In the early part, David Vitter is going to reference that it cost you $10,000, okay? I look strictly at automobile insurance premiums. That's it in calculating that $736 figure. Future Governor Vitter's number is going to include your homeowners. It's going to include the added liability insurance premiums for businesses, which are then passed on to you. He's giving you that aggregate figure when he gives you that $10,000. So and by the way, there was a recent survey that said 72% of you agree we got too many trial lawyers out doing the type thing you're going to see right below this video that's costing us an ungodly amount of money. And 76% said we have got to do something about reforming the legal system in Louisiana. So with that, let's break away. I'm going to let you see the two candidates and their contrasting positions on specifically the jury trial threshold, and then we'll conclude the video at the very end with future Governor David Vitter talking about venue shopping, getting the right judge, which only further adds to these costs. But since the media thought it was so complicated that you couldn't comprehend it, which I think again is an insult, I think you can envision $740 flying right out of your hand in hurricane force winds, because that's what's going on. And I hope you'll bear that in mind as you go and cast your vote on November 21st and vote to retain the $740, and let's not let John Bel Edwards come in with that cattle prod and say, hey, the system's working just fine. Yeah, the trial lawyers are getting the money, and guess what? Under my administration, they're going to keep getting, because I'm going to hit you with that cattle prod, and you're not going to have any choice but to turn loose of the money the same way I did and just watch it fly all over the place, because in hurricane force winds, you can run around all you want to. We've had enough of them in Louisiana. You're never going to get that $740 back. It's that simple. Thank you so much. Now let's go straight on into the remainder of this video and watch future Governor David Vitter and John Bel Edwards contrast and let you know where they stand on this particular issue. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video.
Jim mentioned the statistics. By any measure, literally any measure, Louisiana is a judicial hellhole. We are at the worst end of the list in terms of abusive lawsuits that cost Louisiana citizens money and jobs, and we need to do something about it. Now, this isn't some esoteric issue that just affects big businesses or just affects lawyers. It affects every citizen in our state. People estimate that it essentially levies a tax, a frivolous litigation tax of about $10,000 on every family of four. It puts enormous burden on small business in particular, because experts have done independent studies and have said about 81% of the cost of that frivolous litigation is borne by small business, not mega business. And in Louisiana, the most obvious way it impacts all of us are insurance rates. We pay some of the highest insurance rates in the country, about $7,300 a year for all sorts of insurance combined, and about $2,300 a year on average for car insurance alone. And the single biggest factor that drives that is frivolous litigation and that sort of litigation climate. And it is a centerpiece of my strategy to dramatically improve our business climate in Louisiana. But don't take my word for it. Don't take the fact that I'm the only candidate with specifics in writing in our plan. Perhaps the most telling evidence of all of this is that the trial lawyers have organized because of this and are literally spending $4 million to attack me in this campaign. So take their word for it. That's the most compelling evidence. So perhaps that's the most compelling evidence of who will do something about this moving forward and who won't. And
Louisiana is the only state that requires individual claims reach $50,000 before allowing a jury trial. Do you support or oppose legislation to eliminate or reduce the jury trial threshold?
I think we should get rid of the jury trial threshold completely. They have the highest threshold in the nation by far. I support going to zero, which is what the great majority of states, the rule is in their states. 36 states have no jury trial threshold. Only 14 states have any threshold. Louisiana has the highest by far. The next highest after us is Maryland at 15, and so 25 would still be the highest by far in the country. If we have a threshold, say, at 25, that is still free reign for small car accident cases to go to a judge and for him to basically force a settlement way above the actual value of that case. So I think where it really hits people's pocketbooks in terms of car insurance, insurance rates in general, cost of consumer goods and services, moving from 50 to 25 would not have a major impact. We need to move much, much lower. Again, only 14 states have any limit. We're at 50, Maryland is 15. 8 of those 14 states have a limit of $1,500 or less, so virtually no limitation. This is a key reform that's necessary to really break the stranglehold of abusive lawsuits in many of our courts. A lot of arguments were made previously about the need to have courts operate more efficiently. I think there have been several studies more recently across multiple states that disprove those arguments. I do think we can handle it, particularly since we have the 7th highest number of judges per capita in the country. And for every judge in the state, we only have 1 jury trial per year. So I think we can handle that. And actually, what you'll see is far fewer undue lawsuits being filed and litigated versus clogging up the courts, because the high jury trial threshold and the ability for lawyers in many cases to get undue settlements actually floods the courts with lawsuits that would be thinned out if we made that reform.
I'll make one that's a lot simpler that I think everyone will understand. I'd like to know your position. Do you believe a person has the constitutional right to have a trial by jury for civil matters for amounts less than $50,000? If you do support it, would you be inclined to revive efforts that failed this last legislative session to have that threshold lowered? If you do not support it, would you please explain why you would defend the $50,000 threshold for such trials by jury? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I don't believe there's a constitutional right to a $0 jury trial threshold. Otherwise, we would have constitutional attacks on the current system. No, I don't. And I think the system we have now is fair. I think it's reasonable and it strikes the right balance. If you've got a situation with a fender bender and $8,000 worth of property damage, it seems a particularly inefficient system where you would make 12 people miss a day of work to decide that issue involving $8,000 worth of property damage. We have good judges in the state of Louisiana. Our electorate, we're all told all the time, is very conservative. Why would we think our judges are not? And so I don't see a need to reduce the jury trial threshold. And certainly I have a record on this issue in the legislature over the last 8 years, all of which have been on the Civil Law Committee.
Louisiana is the 7th highest in the nation in terms of the number of judges we have per capita. And for every judge we only have 1 jury trial per judge per year. So we need to lower that jury trial threshold. I would fight to lower it to 0, which is the rule in the huge majority of states. We need other reforms to prevent venue shopping and judge shopping. That's a very common practice that leads to all sorts of abuse in Louisiana. We need to prevent lawyers from bundling huge amounts of campaign money to judicial candidates and thereby gaining enormous undue influence. So,
Senator Vitter.
well, I strongly support that proposal, and I won't simply hope it's brought forward. As governor, I will bring it forward in my first term. It's one of the crucial litigation reforms, lawsuit abuse reforms that we need in Louisiana. We are ranked 47th, near last, in terms of having meaningful venue requirements. What does that mean? It means lawyers can shop for favorable judges. That's what it means. They can go much more easily to judges they helped elect, that they bundle huge amounts of money for and help elect. That's undue influence, and that leads to a very uneven playing field and a lot of abuse in the court system. So I will help not only support that sort of reform, I will introduce it and help lead that effort. Let me say.
All right, it's Robert Burns again, and it is such a delight to be able to come back to you after you've now seen the sharply contrasting standpoints of gubernatorial candidates John Bel Edwards and David Vitter. And as I wrap up this video, I hope you can just remember that image in your mind about the cattle prod and the $736 that you're holding up in hurricane force winds. Those hurricane force winds being in the form of trial lawyers such as Don Carmouche, such as Mr. Cummings, such as several other, Gordon McKernan. I could list off a whole litany of other names, but we'll let those 3 suffice, that have basically funded the super PACs that gubernatorial candidate Vitter referenced Water Coalition, which has nothing to do with water, but it sounds innocent enough. It sounds environmental, as well as the Gumbo PAC, $4 million. Now, where'd they get that money? They got it from your insurance premiums. That's where they got it. And they have no intention of letting it go either. All right? And that's why they have attacked gubernatorial candidate David Vitter with such vigor. Now, I want to say this. I do have a very dear friend, and we've known each other most of my life, and he has told me that he is supporting John Bel Edwards, and he has repeatedly apologized for that. And I said, well, I find it ironic that you would support Mr. Edwards and yet feel a need to apologize. He does not agree philosophically with John Bel Edwards at all, but they've known each other all of their lives. And so he said out of loyalty that he felt compelled to support Mr. Edwards. I have told him it will not affect our friendship, which it won't. But let me just say this. Earlier this year, he shared with me that at the point that he had 3 kids, all driving ages, and he was having to insure these. Now, he is a big believer in insurance. I don't mean just the liability, comprehensive collision, the whole 9 yards. I nearly fell over when he told me what he was paying in insurance premiums. It was almost $20,000 a year. I want to pause and let that sink in. Almost $20,000 a year. Now, insurance premiums are not tax deductible, so that means he was having to earn, say, $32,000 so that he could pay the insurance premiums with after-tax dollars, because that's the way they have to be paid. As I said, I'm an inactive CPA, so these kind of things will come to me. And so if you take that 30% figure that I gave you of your typical auto renewal policy, and I would encourage every one of you to go and get that renewal notice and multiply the number by 0.3. But if you do so in his case, well, that would be $6,000 a year. Okay, that's $500 a month. That's an awful lot of loyalty to a childhood friend who differs philosophically in most every respect with your political beliefs. That's a lot of love. That's showing some serious love. $500 a month. Now, gubernatorial candidate Vitter has numerous times encouraged people to go to davidvitter.com and look at his plan. And I saw one newspaper commenter. I am guilty of commenting quite frequently on articles. And this particular commenter said he didn't like the fact that Vitter told him to go to see his plan. He wanted for him to spell it out for him in a debate. And, you know, you get, what, a minute, 30 seconds? Sometimes they cram you down to 15 seconds. You cannot convey the material that I have just presented to you in 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, not even 2 minutes, okay? And that gentleman is certain, he criticized Vitter heavily. And that gentleman is certainly, he said, I don't want to do homework. What next? Vitter's going to assign me homework? Well, here's what I'm going to say. You don't have to do any homework, all right? But here's what I'll tell you. It's taken you 20 minutes, maybe 25, to watch this video in which I'm telling you a vote for David Vitter can very easily put this kind of money in your hands. There's the $740. And by the way, when I turned the hurricane, it did scatter this money all over everywhere, but I managed to round it up. And I did have a friend to preview this before I sent it out, and he said, you better be careful flashing that kind of money. People look up your address and they'll come rob you. Let me put everybody at ease. By the time you're watching this video, this cash is not going to be in my possession. It's going to be back in Capital One Bank. So I appreciate the admonition, but there's no fear there. But let me just say this, $736. Now, he doesn't want to go do a little bit of homework to read David Vitter's plan, all right? How much time will he spend working in after-tax dollars to make this $736, well, $740, I rounded. Is it going to take him 1 day, Well, he's an awfully high-paid executive if that's all it's going to take. I can tell you I can't do it in one day. Will it take him 2 days? Will it take him 3 days of working? Will it take him 4 days of working? How about 5? How about 6? How about 7 days of working? Now we're starting to get around the average Louisiana median income. Maybe slightly more time than 7 days to earn this funds. Is it going to take him 8 days? 9 days? 10 days? 15 days? Now we're starting to get closer. 20 days? We're starting to get closer to how long it takes struggling families in Louisiana to earn the money that it takes to get $740 to pay your insurance premium. That's just what you're losing out on as a result of these trial lawyers, okay? 15 to 20 days. So what happens? They can't buy it. It's not something. Very often people want to obey the law and buy the required mandatory. This is not optional. We talked about a tax. This is not optional. You got to pay this to drive. And so some folk who would very much want to obey the law simply have to make economic choices, and they say, I'm going to have to roll the dice, and I'm going to have to go without insurance. Well, guess what? We've recently seen in the news that our LSP Colonel, Mike Edmondson, has sent out numerous letters to folks that, now many of them were erroneous, but no doubt a good number of them are perfectly accurate in saying, we don't have evidence that you had automobile liability insurance. And so you tack on this, then they say, you got to pay us a fine, and thus and so, and get reinstated in good graces with the Office of Motor Vehicles, all of which is commendable because you should have to have insurance to drive in this state. But here's the reality. You can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. There's a reason many of them were driving without automobile insurance, and it was because these trial lawyers took their money. Okay? They took their money and they want to keep taking the money. And you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. So whereas Mike Edmondson was relying on this $10 or $11 million to fund pay raises for state troopers, an admirable thing. Troopers need to be paid. But you also ought to define where the money's going to come from. And it's they've collected next to nothing on the recent strength of enforcement. And there's a reason. The reason they didn't have insurance is because they could not afford it. It's that simple. David Vitter wants to make that insurance not only less expensive for the fortunate who can afford it, but he wants to encourage more law-abiding citizens by bringing down these premiums to a reasonable level that we can all have automobile liability insurance. But he can't do it if he doesn't lasso in the trial lawyers who have put up $4 million of that money to defeat him. I hope you will weigh all of this into your decision of whom to vote for on November 21st. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Get out and vote on November 21st. And I encourage you to vote for David Vitter to put this money back in your pocket. It belongs to you. Take it back. Thank you so much, everyone.